What's going on, family? You guys are so amazing. I've got a special interview for you on today. I'm talking to pastors that are about to walk into a new assignment, even seasoned pastors that's about to take over a greater assignment. Dr. Marcus Allen. I promise you, his book is entitled I Got Next. It's going to bless your life. It's really centered around a manual helping pastors and preachers that are about to take over an assignment where the previous pastor has pastored there for a while. So before you go in and try to change things and try to remodel things, I would suggest take a look at this book. It's going to bless your life. It's going to help your journey. Let's go. We have a special guest, Dr. Marcus Allen. He's going to talk about his book. Before we talk about his book, we're going to go a journey just to find out who he is. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. How you doing?
Man, wonderful, wonderful. Listen, tell us something about yourself that we don't know.
Well, it's not much that's not unfamiliar to many folks. People know me. I'm pretty much an open book, but I'm a Bible believer, and I don't do heights because Jesus says, "And lo, I will be with you always." He didn't say high. No, let me stop. But I just don't do heights or roller coasters and none of those types of things, man. That's something people probably don't know about me, but I'm pretty open book, man. So people know who I am and what I stand for.
I love it. So, you wrote a book. You wrote an awesome book. Tell us something about before the writing of the book. As a child, did you know that you were going to write a book? Did you have a dream, desire to write a book? What happened in the process of being there and now writing the book?
Right, man. Honestly, I say this all the time. When I was growing up, I had no vision of being anything. Right. Normally kids say, I want to be a police officer. I want to be a lawyer, judge, whatever. I had no vision past just seeing my mom working hour after hour, day after day, just to make ends meet. Yeah. So that's all I had knowledge of: getting a job, going to work, and providing for my family. And so that's all I had. I didn't have any vision of becoming what I am today. I started preaching when I was 13 years old, and so God has been in my life all of my life, and joined the United States Army at 19 years old. And after joining, I served 10 and a half years in the Army. Okay. Went around the world a couple of times, to Iraq once, at least twice, in Afghanistan once, and came back, and I stopped in Virginia. And while in Virginia, that's when I went to seminary at Sam DeWitt Proctor School of Theology, and I heard God's voice to tell me to go pastor there, but I never thought that I'd be an author. You hear what I'm saying? I never Absolutely. Thought that I would be writing some information that allowed people to read, and prayerfully is my hope to get it inside of a seminary that they can use for people who are aspiring to be pastors, people who want to be a pastor. So I never saw myself in this position at all. I never saw it. And even I want to thank my wife for the push, for pushing me to do this.
I know for me, to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, I ran as long as I could. I had a story of Jonah. So I ran. I didn't answer the call immediately. I ran. What was your backdrop to answer the call?
Man, it was one day. I grew up in a single family household. My mom, again, was just a hard worker, and we didn't have health insurance and stuff. Right. I played basketball a lot, and one day playing basketball, came down on my knee, injured my knee. And I went home, and my mama didn't take me. At least my mother did not take me to the doctor. I'm laying in the bed. She came and put oil and praying on me, doc. Wow. So I'm asleep, and I hear her just praying on my leg that God would just heal me. And it was just that moment. I just felt the presence of God, and I heard Him tell me, "Go preach." She the only one I told that day. I didn't tell anyone else. And then it wasn't until the next year, about a year later, we were in vacation Bible school, and we was in the classroom, and our teachers, they was asking us to share some secrets with them. And that was my secret, you know. My secret was God had called me to preach, and I cried that whole night. You know, I was just totally afraid. I didn't know what to expect. Um, it was difficult. And my pastor, and they said they was, this the main thing. The teachers said they weren't going to tell anybody about what happened.
That's how they
in
normally
class.
started off.
But somehow it got back to my pastor. Yeah. Yeah. Somehow it got back to my pastor, Pastor George H. Jolly at Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church. It got back to him. And around this time, a lot of preachers had said they had been called to preach. I think it was about 8 of us.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I think it was about
young
8
preachers?
of us. Young, nope, I was the youngest. It was, I think it was, it was 6 women and 2 males.
Okay.
And said they had been called to preach. And my pastor, hey, he had heard about everybody saying they called to preach, so he called the meeting to see everybody who said they had been called to preach. And I go to church, I go up the steps. It's like my pastor's office is around the corner. I peep around the corner, like, nah, I changed my mind. I'm not going. And I know for certain, he didn't see me. I know for certain he didn't see me. But when I dug back down, he like, you coming in.
Oh, wow.
And that was it, man. That was it from that day. You coming in, it's like something like God is saying, no, I see you, I know where you are, and now it's your choice what you're gonna do with the call that I placed on your life. So I went to my pastor and went in there, and it was tough at first because sitting in the office with grown men, and while they're in the office, they talk about grown men stuff, and I felt alienated. And I talked to my pastor about it, and he allowed me to be vulnerable with him. He allowed me to be honest with him. He apologized for some things, but it was just different for me. I thought they was just pushing me to the side because I was the youngest one in there, but it wasn't the case. The case was they talking about grown folk stuff, and I'm a teenager, and so I really didn't comprehend to know what was going on. But my pastor, I commend him to this day, Pastor George H. Jolly. I call his name as much as I can, for him believing the God that was in me when I was 13 years old to allow me to stand in his pulpit and preach. That speaks of the God in him, that he trusted that so that I am the man that I am today.
Absolutely. So along your journey, did you ever stop? You know, because a lot of people, I don't understand why people ask this question when they see certain people, are you still preaching? So at any point in your journey, at 13 years old to now, did you take a pause, take a sabbatical? Did you take a break? How was that journey?
Never. I've been on the battlefield for the Lord. Yeah. And I'm gonna stay on until I die. No, but I've never taken a pause, never taken a break. Yeah. Now, when I went to Germany, I wasn't used as much, but it was a time of preparation for me. Yeah. And then when I went to Iraq the first time, we didn't really have church services and things like that. So it's basically me just talking to people about the Bible. And then going to Iraq and Afghanistan the second time, we had full live church services, worship services, where I was allowed to preach in the desert, to speak life to troops, sailors, Marines, airmen, and civilians about the gospel of Jesus Christ. So I've never taken a break. Now, it's been some seasons of drought, right? Some seasons where I wasn't using the gift of preaching from the pulpit per se, but I was able to still be able to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ in those arenas. And again, I've been preaching, but I ain't been perfect, right? Right. But I've always stayed in church on Sunday morning. So
my mom used to always tell me, no matter what you do on Saturday, you better be in church on Sunday.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So let's move forward a little bit. You answered the call to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now you're pastoring. Please tell us the difference. How did you know that God had called you to pastor? Because there's a distinctive difference between being called to preach and being called to pastor. How did you know at what point? And I'm leading up to your book. How did you know at what point that God has called me to pastor and preach?
Right. So, again, after I think everything in my life building up to the moment of being a pastor of a church, God was preparing me. The Army gave me these unique skills of leadership. Put me in these moments where I had to lead a diverse group of people to do a particular mission and to get it done by any means necessary. So I believe the military prepared me for that. This position that I am in today. You know, I didn't really want to join the military, but I felt the call, God telling me to do it. So I believe that led up to me going to Virginia. When I went to Virginia, I attended the Tabernacle Baptist Church under Robert Allen Diggs in Petersburg, Virginia. That's my man. That's my dude right there. When I came there, I preached a few times, and it was crazy. The second time I preached there, 30 people joined the church in one Sunday.
Wow.
You hear me, Doc? 30 people, and that was like mind blowing to me.
Absolutely.
And it was crazy. I had never seen nothing like that. Even while church was over, people were still coming down, wanting to be a part of the church during that Sunday. And Pastor Diggs was out that Sunday, and he came back, and people was telling him about me and stuff like that. And from there, he just began to send me out everywhere. I was going from every Sunday. I was preaching at a different church, sometimes twice or three times a Sunday, because of Pastor Diggs' recommendations, because he knows so many people in Virginia. And so I was everywhere, and most of the churches he was sending me to did not have a pastor.
Wow.
I don't know if it was intentional on his part or it was just God's planning. But most of the church he sent me to did not have a pastor. I was driving sometimes 2 hours, 2.5 hours away from Petersburg to Aosinspires, to go preach. And it was because Pastor Diggs, he was just sending me out. I was preaching so many different places. And then in 2010, he got me into seminary, and so I was in seminary, and I was just preaching, and I'm grateful, I'm thankful for the opportunity that people allowed me to preach and hear my voice. And then in 2011, I went to Union Branch Baptist Church, and they asked me to come preach. I preached 3 Sundays in January. They were a part-time church, and so they only went to church on the 2nd, 4th, and 5th Sunday. And so I went there and preached, and then their pastor had just retired, so they were looking for an interim pastor. Looking for somebody who wasn't interested in the pastorship, being the pastor of the church. Someone they didn't have to pay much, right? Because they already got a job or something.
That's how it always go.
Yeah, and so I was like, yo, I'm still in the Army. I was still in the Army. I was like, I don't really want to pastor. That's not on me right now. So I'll preach.
So at what point in your life did you know that it was on you? Because I'm glad that you were transparent at that moment, because you said, no, it's not on me to pastor. I just want to preach. So at what moment in your journey did you say, listen, I can't run from this anymore. God wants me to pastor.
It started there when they selected me to be their interim pastor. When they selected me to be the interim pastor, because I was in the Army. Matter of fact, if I was still be in the Army next year, I'd be retiring from the United States Army, getting a check in the mail every first of the month.
Absolutely.
Just from waking up. If I wake up on the 1st, I get a check, right? But it was I heard God then. Once I started being the interim, once I was in the seat, seeing how things going, doing the pastoral counseling, doing the pastoral care, doing the funerals and weddings and things of that sort. Started doing all of those things, and I just fell in love with leading people. At least I already been in that position of leading people, but now I'm leading
Right.
God's people. And so it was, I want to say, so it was about 2012, early part of 2012 when I started to get this urge, because other churches was also looking at me, asking me to be their pastor also, if I put in. And so that's when I started seeing people was interested in me. I was like, wow, this may be what God wants me to do. Now, I didn't know for sure it was a calling on me, but when I started to be in the position as the interim, I had to make some hard decisions, Doc. I had to make some real hard decisions if I was to stay in the army, or was going to be a pastor. And I heard God tell me He wanted me to be a pastor. And not June, I want to say March 2012. That's where it really jumped on me. While I was the interim at Union Branch, I had attended at least 25 funerals of members and family members connected to members of the church, and I went to all of them. I was a part of all of them. I was with the families. I was in the hospital room. You had gained that trust from the family, and had also developed those relationships, because that's when you normally become the pastor at celebrations and at mourning. So that helps you to become the pastor. So I was with them, and I was the interim pastor. And I remember in May 2012, I told them I wanted to be the pastor. And they, the bylaws say, yo, you can't be the interim and be the pastor. So you have to resign as the interim if you want to be the pastor and go through the process like everyone else. I was shocked because, I've been here all this time. I've been
putting
doing
so much work.
Putting so much work, and now you just can't put me in the seat. And May 2012 is also when I was my final out day as a service member, as a soldier. And once I got out the army, it was like I was never in. They gave me 6 months of medical and dental. Then after that's all the dealings they had with me. And so I had a family of three children and my wife. May 2012, I get out the army with no income. I have to quit being the interim pastor, so I now have no income again. And so it was a real tough time for my family at that time. But my wife, she held it down. She was still in the army, and so she held it down for us during that season of life. And it was a difficult time. And I thought, Lord, why did you tell me to get out the army to be a pastor and let me go through this? And so once I think it was September 2012, that's when Union Branch called me back and said, hey, we want you to be the pastor. Some of the members, they knew the bylaw said they can have special call meetings based off a petition being signed. I think it had to be like 2/3 of the church, and a special call meeting to come discuss the issue. And that's what came about with me being the pastor of that church. And so that's how I became the first pastor of my first church. So
I love it.
It was challenging. It was so much uncertainty. I had so much more for me as far as being in the military, because then when I said yes, I didn't know how much pastors was getting paid. And so I took
say it's a big difference.
My pay was cut in half with limited benefits. Benefits way less than what I had while in the army. So it was a God moment.
Absolutely, I love it. So let's transition. Let's move a little faster. Let's talk about the book. I truly believe that most people birth books out of a burden or out of a need, because they see a need for something that needs to be said, or needs to be encouraged, or needs to be mentioned. How did the book birth for you?
Well, it came for me. It was my first church. I went to Union Branch Baptist Church. When I left, it was 150. At least it was 149 years old. It's 152 years today. And they had a pastor who had been there for 45 years. And I came after him.
Wow.
And I didn't know the challenges that comes in that transition, especially when the previous pastor is what something I call in the book a legend.
Right,
Uh, a legend, someone who served well for a long period of time,
Yeah.
someone who has buried your family members, married you, attended your graduation, baptized you
Yeah.
when you was a child. Someone of that sort becomes a legend to the people.
Yes.
And that's the situation I came into. Just last week, I did a book launch, and I interviewed some people from Union Branch.
Yeah.
And one of the deacons told me the difference was the previous pastor, when he left, he was 80 years old. When I came
Wow.
in, I was 28 years old.
Wow. Big difference.
That's a huge difference in cultures, right? And
Yes.
ethics and drive and push. And so one thing I told them, I apologize for, because I didn't get to know him like I should have when I went into that seat.
Right.
And that's the first chapter that I talk about in my book, is just getting understanding. I didn't get that understanding of the previous pastor before going into the seat, and now he
And why is
allowed me.
it why is it important for young pastors or pastors in general when they're taking over a heavy mantle to get an
Mhm.
understanding of the previous pastor? I think
Right,
that's really good for people to listen to.
right. Because when you go in, you're not the pastor. All right. I think it was William J. Shaw. He said it last year at the National Baptist Convention. He says, when you are selected to be the next pastor, that means you are auditioning to be the next pastor.
Wow.
And so, to for the people to allow you to be the pastor, you're not the pastor. Just because your name is on the marquee, name is on the
Right.
bulletin. If you get to know the previous pastor, how he operated or she operated, how they did things, how they operated, far as pastoral care, knowing how to move in those type of ways that the previous pastor did, it'll prevent a lot of pitfalls on your part, because
Mm.
he'll tell you who the people are. He'll tell you
Yeah.
how to, or she'll tell you how to move and how to do certain things and get the people to move. Because Pastor Jack White, Andrew Jack White, he had built the $4 million sanctuary in the country with a part-time church, and they
Wow.
never missed the mortgage payment. And the mortgage was $13,000 a month for this
Wow.
part-time church in the country, right?
Wow.
And he had pushed those people to that point to be able to do something that great. How now? Why wouldn't I? Now I look back on it now. Why wouldn't I go to him and talk to him about this and how to push these people to greatness, instead of coming in and trying to do things my way? And of course, you
Mm.
got to build your own and do your own stuff, because you got to walk in
Yeah.
your own shoes. You can't walk in his
Yeah.
shoes. But it'd be good to have that knowledge of
Yeah.
who the previous pastor was, what was his leadership traits, how did he lead, how did he care for the people. Jack White, he helped me in my ministry,
Yeah.
because they said whenever it was anything going on with any member, he was always there,
Wow.
and and that pushed me to be that type of dude in my pastoral care position. So
To really step
getting
up.
that knowledge, understanding that, yeah, get that knowledge of that. So that was the one of the reasons for the book being developed. Is while in seminary, I watched few of my classmates go into church, traditional Black Baptist churches, and get voted out within 6 months to a year.
Wow.
Uh, and we always blame the people, right? They didn't want to change.
Right. Right. Right.
There's too much going on in that church. Just those things about the context. Now, every context is different.
Yeah.
But if you go in, so the purpose of the book is to help the incoming pastor and the church and the outgoing pastor, but focus more so on the incoming pastor to have a strategic approach when it comes
Yeah.
to transition, and not just try to jump in the seat and be the man when you have to earn
Mm.
that right of being the
Wow.
man or the woman to be the
Yeah.
pastor of the church. So that was another driving force. One, the uniqueness of following a great pastor and looking at those challenges and seeing how to try to overcome those challenges. And then
Yeah.
two, I saw how pastors was going into churches, and because of their inability to lead properly within 6 months to a year, they were being voted out.
Wow.
And so that's what really drove me to put something in writing so people can learn from my mistakes, right?
Yeah.
This is
And I
it's
think
not
that a
something
lot of
about,
people don't really realize that how important it is to have a manual
right,
to walk in before they begin to take over a heavy mantle like that. Because as you said something so great. Oftentimes when we go to churches, it's now the people don't want to change. It's time to change. It's time to remodel the sanctuary. But
right,
I shared with somebody on yesterday, and also my father, my dad, shared with me. When you go to a church to interview, and they ask you, what is your vision for this church? You don't have a vision for the church. You have to learn the context of that church first.
right.
So
Yes,
now,
sir.
with the manual that you've written, how important would it have been had you had it when you first started pastoring?
Oh my gosh, it would be so important for me to understand the nuances of church,
Yeah.
right? I went in, I didn't know anything about Robert Roosevelt Board. I didn't know anything about church meetings. Because I come from a context where my pastor had one meeting a year, and that was to
Yeah.
tell you how much money we had in the bank, and then that's it. That
Wow.
that that was that. But going to Virginia, the traditional Black Baptist church, you have these quarterly church meetings and stuff, and even understanding that would have helped me tremendously. But it would have this book would have really helped me go in with a strategic approach and stop trying to do so much on the job training. I think that's what happened with
Mm,
pastors so much. We get too much
yeah.
OJT, where we should have to have done some research and done some work prior to getting into the seat. So when we go into it, we can approach it from a strategic standpoint and not from like shooting from the hip. That's what I was
Absolutely.
doing majority of the time I was at Union Branch. I was shooting from the hip. I
Wow.
didn't know a lot,
Wow.
but this document, this book will would have helped me tremendously to be able to go into this seat, understanding the people, understanding how people operate, understanding who I am, and developing my own leadership structure and how I go about doing things, and also knowing the importance of the pulpit.
Yeah.
Sunday morning is a very important time for the church. It's when you get
Yeah.
your largest crowd and when people pay the most attention to what the pastor is saying. It's during the
Yeah.
preaching moment, and
Absolutely.
understanding that would have helped me tremendously. And so I even use the pulpit sometimes ineffectively. Right? I was mean. I was rude. I was
Wow.
cruel. Sometimes I wasn't nice to the people. I tell a story in the book about how one of my lessons is take care of yourself,
Yeah.
because nobody will take care of you like you can take care of yourself. My
That's it.
dad had died, and like I said, I grew up in a single family household. My dad had died, and so I really didn't want to go to the funeral because I really didn't know him.
Yeah.
But I talked to my pastor, and he said, "Go ahead and go." I go to the funeral. At least I go down. He's in the hospital. He's sick, and the crazy part about it is, no one in Mississippi. They have certain hours when you can go into the ICU.
Yeah.
But because I was clergy, I can go back there anytime I wanted to.
Anytime you want to.
And just all my life I didn't have access to him. Everybody else did,
Wow.
you know.
Wow.
And now, and while he's in ICU, I'm the only one who had the most access to him. That was crazy. He dies on a Thursday, and then they have the funeral the next week. I stay in Mississippi for about 10 days, um, but I'm young again and crazy, thinking my church need me in the pulpit. They have the funeral that Saturday morning. That Saturday night, I get on the plane back to Virginia, and I'm in the pulpit Sunday morning.
Wow.
Um, and the anger and the frustration I had with my dad not being in my life and dying, I took it out on the church that morning.
Wow.
Um, I bled out on the people, right?
Wow.
And nobody stopped me from going to the pulpit, right? Nobody told me, "Hey, Pastor, you should take some more time off to get yourself together." But it was Pastor. I was assuming Pastor hasn't been here. He missed last week's Sunday. He need to be here this Sunday. And so I know now, if I would have had this book, it would have taught me, yo, if you're going through some stuff personally, somebody else can fill your spot until you can get your life together and you can be effective in the pulpit. And so that was a life-changing, life-altering moment for me and then it didn't click to me until I was writing the book, when I was talking about self-care and things like that. So it's definitely a great source for those who are going into pastoring. It's a great source for churches to have an understanding of the pastor, because I also speak about the expectations that are placed on pastors when they first come in. People want you to do great things that they haven't done in 30 years. But they want you to come right in and be able to fulfill those expectations. You hear what I'm saying? And oftentimes that's what leads pastors to burnout and pain and hurt and suffering, because we're trying to live up to those expectations that are unrealistic. And so that's what hurts us sometimes. So churches need to understand not to put these unrealistic expectations on the pastor when you don't even put them on yourself.
Absolutely. Listen, man, I want to say thank you so very much for being a special guest. I believe that your book, I Got Next, is going to be a blessing to some young pastors, also to some older pastors that's about to take over even a greater assignment. I believe it's going to be a blessing to their lives. This is what I need you to do. As you close out, I need you to tell them how they can get the book. Tell us a scenario about the book, and just close out in your own special way.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you all so very much for watching this wonderful show. I am so appreciative of just being on here, but I am also here to tell you that this book, I Got Next, 10 Essential Lessons to Learn for Effective Pastoral Transition, is a great book that you need if you're going to have any type of movements in life. Right now, we're facing so much transition in the world that the church will not look like the church it looked like earlier this year. Things are changing, things are moving, things are shifting. And this book will be a great source for incoming pastors, for the church, and for pastors that's been in a position for a while. That it helps you understand that you need to get understanding of the context in which you're going to, get understanding of transition, get understanding that many churches are going through a grieving process when their pastor either dies or leaves or not there anymore. So you get understanding. It helps you understand. It helps you also build on the foundation. Oftentimes, new pastors go into positions and they see something they don't like and they try to remove it. But you don't know how much went into to put that piano in the corner that no one ever plays or no one ever uses. But you just tired of looking at it. But you need to get an understanding of why it's there, and you need to build on the foundation that's already in place. But ultimately, whenever you're in the middle of transition, whenever you're in the middle of change, you need to make sure you take care of yourself. No one will take care of you like you. So you make sure you get you some mentors, get you some people you talk to, take care of your family, take care of yourself. This book you can get it from Amazon, Christian bookstore. You can get it on Westbow Press. But if you want a signed copy, you can get it from me directly at IGotNext@BigCartel.com. That's IGotNext@BigCartel.com. You can get it at that location. Thank you so very much for having me. Thank you so very much for listening. I promise you this book will bless your life and help you in the midst of the transition that you're in to push you to the next level that you're striving to be at. God bless you and take care.